All right, looks like it's 4:30. Hello, everybody. Give me a wave, make sure you can hear me and working that okay. All right, excellent. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Tara Tarango, and my colleague Dawn is around here somewhere as well. She can say hello. I think I heard her. Anyway, thanks so much for joining us. I just am so tired of hearing about unprecedented times and how tough it is out there, but you can't get around the fact that it absolutely is. So I really appreciate your time as we start to look a little bit ahead toward next year and what the whole process of school improvement planning might look like. So I will share with you a little bit about what we want to cover here today. We're really good about making sure we get you out of here on time. So we will be done in 30 minutes, but hopefully, or not 30 minutes, an hour. But I want to make this the best use of your time as well. So we'll do quick welcome and introductions, a little bit about, just why school improvement planning is important. So you can get your mind back around why are we even taking time to think about this. But the bulk of our time, and this is my favorite thing about this event, and some of you who are joining us have been to, this is our 4th Better Together event, I believe. We do them about every 3 or 4 months, I think, Dawn?
Yeah, yep. Every 4 months, yep.
And my favorite thing is it's really all about administrators getting to share with other administrators. So often you guys don't get to talk to one another and just hear what's working for you or what challenges do you have that I just want to commiserate with. So the chance to share with each other, we'll have good little discussions around these 3 questions. So go ahead and start thinking about, these questions, because it's all about how much you share with one another. What funding opportunities are you finding? How do you set and prioritize goals? And what communication plans have you found effective? And I'll go through in a minute why we chose those 3 questions. But those are the things we hope for you to share with one another. And then we did take some time to, talk to a bunch of different administrators, did a lot of listening, did a lot of reading to come up with some tips and tools on those same 3 topics that we can share with you as well in terms of funding, goal setting, and communication plans. So that hopefully you get something from one another, but we also want to share with you some best practices that we found. And then we'll end with a little bit about how we can help. If we can be helpful right now, we would love to be helpful, because it's really tough out there. And if there's anything that we can do to make it a little easier, we would be happy to. And then it's not us if we don't do a giveaway. So at the very end, we're going to have a lunch and learn giveaway. We love to feed teachers. So at the end of this, if you'd like to enter for that, basically we do a virtual visit to your school and we order in lunch to your school for usually about up to 30 teachers. And we'll pick a topic of their choice and give them a little PD and lunch at the same time. So that's a little bit about what we have for agenda. If you haven't gotten in your mailbox already, again, we're all about the food, but also we just like to say thank you. So thanks for joining us. Thanks for your interest in thinking about, planning for next year. So just like we're better together here, another thing that goes better together is chocolate and vanilla. So there's a nice little cake ball surprise coming your way. If you are in the United States, this shipment is either at your door, or if you registered in the last few days, it may be on its way to you. So be on the lookout for that. All right. Did I miss anything, Dawn?
No, I think you covered it all.
All right. So as I said, here's your team. I'm Tara, and Dawn's here as well. But as I mentioned, the biggest part of this is you guys. So being able to talk to one another. So your grown-ups, do what you need to do, but I would encourage you to take your, to have your camera on so you can participate and share with one another, because I know that you guys have some rich, great ideas out there that would be helpful to share. That's just what someone else needs to hear. So would appreciate that. And then I also, if you, want to recap any of the things we talk about or have a reminder of those things, or also a place even to take notes, there's one handout document. So you can either go to this bit.ly right here, and maybe Ben's running the back end there. Maybe he can throw that in the chat as well. Or if you're a phone person, you can scan it there and access it that way. But that's a handout to go with this, so that if you are interested in any of the links that we talk about, you can find those there. All right. So yeah, I did just want to at least acknowledge the fact that I really appreciate us thinking about, what's moving forward going to look like. But I do just have to acknowledge, it is really tough. Every day, Dawn sent me an article just yesterday. She was like, this brought me to tears. It was just an administrator story, of how really tough it is there to kind of keep one, hand focused on the teaching and learning that you kind of got into this job to do. But then the other is on, you're constantly contact tracing and trying to, deal with all the different protocols and safety issues and, parent concerns and all that's going on right now. It's really, and all the shortages, the sub shortages, the bus driver shortages. I mean, it's really an impossible job right now. So my hat's off to you. And I wish I could say there was some silver bullet to make it all better. We've tried to put together some things that, might be applicable right now, but you and your school and your teachers and your students. And I just want to say, thanks for doing everything you can to support them in such a difficult time, and make sure you're taking some time for yourself, because we talk about how teachers are on the brink, and really on the edge, but administrators are too. All that kind of rolls right on your shoulders as well. So it's rough out there, but it's rough out there, but that doesn't stop the 22-23 school year from rolling around, right? So it's coming whether we like it or not. So we did a quick survey as we were starting to plan for this, just asking administrators what their most pressing considerations were when they talk about the school improvement planning process. So these were the answers that kind of rose up there to the top, these top three in particular. So people really had some pressing considerations around funding, around communicating their plan, and kind of the basic premise of school improvement planning, which is setting goals and prioritizing those needs. So that's why we picked those three topics. We could have easily picked a few things. I was kind of surprised, honestly, by addressing mental health and wellness, because we'd heard a lot about that as well. But, on any given day, you might get a different results from a survey, but these are the three that rose to the top. So we decided to make those the focus of our conversations together, as well as the tools and strategies that we decided to share. All right, so just a little bit, I just kind of wanted to set the stage to get your brains thinking a little bit about why we're here talking about school improvement planning. Why do we even bother with it? Well, of course, I love a good visual, so this is a fun little way to think about it. But cutting is more fun than measuring, right? If we don't take the time to measure, we're going to end up with signs like this. And if we don't take time to plan our year, we're going to end up a little bit rudderless, perhaps, right? So just some basic common sense thing, right? If we take that time to school improvement plan, we have better decision making. We have a heightened awareness of our progress, where we can't really kind of tell where we are in progress of that goal if we don't know what that goal is. And we have clearer communication with stakeholders, whether that's school board or district personnel or parents or community members, right? All the different stakeholders. I think when we have this school improvement planning process, we can have clear communication with them. And the most important reason, I think, is just that increased likelihood of success. And there's all sorts of, I should have them at the top of my head, but read lots of data on, if you write down a goal, you're this much more likely to achieve it, right? So having that planning process down, giving it some thought, and kind of codifying that in this document, I think does really help increase your likelihood of success. So hopefully that's why you thought this was worth coming to the webinar, and I'm not just preaching to the choir. But wanted to give you that just as, a reminder of why we're here. So again, we thought, let's gather some ideas around those key topics, right? You guys are full of them, of ideas that we want to share with one another. So that's what we'll do now. Let's see, I think we have enough to break out into rooms. So we'll break out into a few rooms so we can have some good discussions around these three questions, and we'll take about 30 minutes. Dawn's going to facilitate one and I'll facilitate another. And like I said, we'll just share information around these three questions, and then we'll come back together and maybe, share a little bit about something you took away from that conversation, as well as we'll share some of the strategies that we heard from administrators in our research, and other kind of things that we've looked at. Sound good? Any questions? All right. We will jump into those breakout rooms, and I'll see you there, and we will discuss these really pressing topics. It looks like we're coming back together here. Jim, you were finishing off a good comment there. So I think we got the gist of it, but sorry that I cut you off as we were coming back in. It's always hard to know when the hammer is about to drop,
That's right.
All right, I am going to bring back up my sharing of the screen really quick, and we'll get back into the presentation if I can find it. One moment. But meanwhile, if you would think about what's one takeaway maybe that you had from your conversations, and we'll use the chat for this. So go ahead and take a second to put into the chat something that you took away from your breakout session. Hopefully there was at least one or two tidbits that you can can cling on to. Let's get those going in the chat, and maybe Dawn, you can look for those while I find.
Sure.
There we go. All right. Let's see what's happening in the chat box.
Artist says effective use of funding.
All right. So some folks got something on there.
Mm-hmm. Oh, there we go. Good. Starting to roll down here. Be afraid to collaborate with others, undergoing school improvement planning. Collaboration. I love that. Yes. Can't do it alone. Everyone is in the same vessel. Yes, dealing with the same issues for sure.
Excellent.
Very true. We are better together, right? Oh,
yes. All right. Well, keep those coming in.
Communication.
And sharing, it's nice to just sort of have that second to reflect, or if you're using the HyperDoc, there's also a place in there you can write it in if that's better for you. So we will move on here. And as promised, we'll go through a couple of the things that we found under each of those subjects as well. So we'll get started with the funding piece of it. So Dawn and I were like, let's just come up with what are the 2 to 3 tips for each one of these that we can share, right? So that's kind of the approach we took on this. Let me move your pretty little faces over there. And so the first one I'm going to go pretty quick through because most of you guys know about the ESSER funding or EANS funding if you're a private school. But if you don't, I want to make sure you at least know that that's there. So first thing is, my first tip is just to understand and know what funding is available. And there's a great little document here that's in the handout. In case you're just, want to make sure you've looked under every cushion of that couch. This kind of goes through what are the federal grants that are out there. What are competitive grants? So there's a couple links to competitive grants that are out there. Any foundation or corporate grants or gifts, there's a few links there that you can look to. And then also, different crowdsourcing opportunities that we may not always think of. So just a little document there to remind you what all those different types of fundings that are available. But if you haven't necessarily taken advantage of those ESSER funds, I won't read you this whole slide, but I wanted you to have it. There's links to these slides also in that document. So this is what I call the ESSER compressor, the compressed version of ESSER 1, 2, and 3. When each of them came out, how much is awarded in each of them, when they can be used by, when they can be used, and when they need to be used by. I think that's the most important thing to know here is that ESSER 1 funds were, needs to be used. Those needed to be maybe used for costs from as soon as the pandemic. So they were retroactive back to mid-March of 2020, but those really needed to be through 2021. So now we're into that ESSER 2 funds and ESSER 3 funds as we work through the 22 and 23 school year. So just a resource for you. And then just, like I said, if it's new to you, I want to make sure everyone understood that ESSER money, it's a lot of money, and it went to each of the states, the state education agencies. But one of the things I really like about it is that only 10% could be reserved there at the state education agency. 90% of that money that went to the state had to go to a local education agency, a district, a school, right? And then as some folks in our group mentioned, then there's some parameters on that. So the district or school gets that money, 20% of that has to go toward that term learning loss or some way to accelerate learning. And the remaining can go toward any other allowable expense. So wanted to just recap that. And then if you are curious, what can those be used for? It's really, really broad. So I tried to categorize here some of those under learning loss, since at least 20% have to be used for learning loss. So that's anything from assessments to summer learning programs to professional development, instructional materials, and of course, all the other stuff, right? Anything that is authorized by IDEA or ESEA can be used with ESSER funds, but as well as software, hardware. We talked about, a lot of folks found that early on we were using a lot of ESSER money for some of the infrastructure, HVAC, all that kind of stuff. And maybe we're moving a little bit more now into the professional development, learning loss, acceleration, those sorts of pieces. But the biggest thing to note, the only qualifier on the ESSER funds to kind of look for is you do want stuff that is evidence-based. And I'll show you what I consider some examples of that, kind of what to look for. But that's the one thing you definitely want to think about. So first tip was to understand and know what funding is available. My second tip is to, if I had to pick one idea that I've heard from talking to administrators over the last couple months about this, what are they spending their money on in other schools? And these are the sort of subjects that have come up most: technology, professional development, staffing, summer school programming, and mental health. Those have been the top kind of categories people are spending the money on. So I'm curious to see if those resonate for you. How have you spent your money or plan to spend? Is it, and you can answer in the chat here, if this is any of the areas, these, or if you have something else. I want to take just a minute before I reveal to you what my my recommendation is on the prioritization of those. But let's see what you guys come up with. So let's put in the chat here, how are you spending that ESSER or EANS funding? Whether it's on any of those listed here or something else. I'll give you a second to chat in the chat. HVAC, staffing at a custodial position, great. All the above, and also transportation. Yeah, that definitely could make it on that list. After school, summer school, mental health, staffing and professional learning, technology and staffing. Okay, all right. So all of the above plus, yeah.
Yeah.
Curriculum PD. Excellent. Okay, good. I wanted to kind of get a sense of what you guys are coming up with. And this is my admittedly subjective, but in talking to folks and hearing what's worked the best, if I were to, again, your schools, your districts, your students, your teachers, but given where we're at right now for most folks, I would say this is kind of the way I would prioritize it. I would say staffing is number one. Because our teachers are absolutely burnt out and they don't have anything left to give. But then I would really focus on that kind of related, that mental health piece. How can we, and our group talked a little bit about that. How can we address that for both our staff and our students and our teachers? Summer school coming up here, I do think that's a really ideal time to accelerate learning, to kind of take some of those small groups and see how we can move through some of the instructional loss that we had. Professional development, I think, is key right now. And technology, if you haven't gotten to the place you wanted to get to yet, that's still important, because I don't see some version of hybrid going away anytime soon. So making sure we're available for that. So, but the biggest tip, my second tip is, and this maybe goes without saying for some of you, and one of the folks in our group was doing this as well, but I've heard a lot of success with the idea of 2-year contracts for staffing, so that you're not stuck with a position that you're not sure you can fund once these funds run out in 2 years. So whether that's, a tutor, or whether that is an instructional specialist that you can pull out small groups, I think that is a really great way to kind of address the immediate need right now and see some immediate results that then maybe you can put into your school improvement plan and into your budgets for the upcoming years to hopefully fund that sort of support in an ongoing way. So hopefully, know what funding is available and maybe consider 2-year contracts for your staff. Those are my top 2 tips that in my talking with administrators and doing some research, I wanted to share with you. When it comes to goal setting and prioritization, Dawn's a little extra. So she came up with 3 tips. So
all right. So these all actually came out in my breakout room. So maybe they did in yours as well, but how you identify what your goals are. And so first and foremost, you need to use your data. You have plenty of data to pick from, and making sure that you're doing that collaboratively with your school improvement planning team, whomever lead teachers, district leaders, support staff, those individuals that are going to help you build this plan or renew a plan that, previous year's plan, wherever you are at in that process. So looking at your data, take a look at your needs analysis. What are your teachers seeing in the classroom? What are their needs, instructional needs? What are, maybe building needs? Using that data, doing a community survey. Artists in my group had talked about this survey that she used. It's called the 5 Essentials. And I thought that was just an incredible way to kind of get input from not only your staff, but you get it from your students, you get it from parents as well. So just a great comprehensive way to gather that data on your school and what those needs might be moving into the next year. Also looking at those benchmark tests on those interim assessments that you do. They could be both academic focused, they could be non-academic, maybe attendance, behavioral surveys, interventions, your PBIS systems, whatever that data happens to be. And then also looking at your current or previous year's plan. Right, we're in the middle of the school year right now, but just taking a look at that and seeing, okay, what are these goals that we want to keep, and what are the ones that we might need to modify, or what are the ones that we need to scrap, and adding that to that decision process. So once you take a look at all of that data, you will come up with then this list of goals. Tara, if you can go to the next slide, perfect, of possible goals for your school improvement plan. And most likely, you're going to have more goals than what is ideal, that sweet spot of 2 to 5 goals. So we need to prioritize those goals. And as it came out in the chat as well, collaborate, collaborate, collaborate. You are not in this alone. So bring in those people to help you collaborate. So I just want to share with you 3 really quick strategies that can help your group collaborate your goals. One is just called bubble prioritization. And what you do is you have your list of goals, possible goals. You take that first goal and the second goal on the list, and then you just compare them. Okay, which one kind of rises to the top? Then put that other one aside. Then go to that third one on the list. Put it up against the one that you've just determined was number 1, and decide, okay, which one rises to the top? And then the one that doesn't, put to the side. So it will help you identify which of the goals bubble up to the top. Another strategy, this is a framework. It's called the Eisenhower Matrix. And this became very popular from Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And it's this urgent and important kind of dichotomy here. So where you want to plan in your goals there are going to be in that quadrant 2. That's that strategic planning phase. Those are the ones that are really going to make a difference. They're going to move your school, your district forward. Now, rewind 2 years ago, those school improvement plans that you had probably had to be shelved, and you had to put more of your goals in that quadrant 1, which were those urgent, reactive type of tasks or goals because of COVID protocols. And we had to get everyone a computer and technology access. There were so many variables that had to change because of that. But really, ideally, you want to stick within that quadrant 2. And then finally, this grid analysis, we created, when I say we, it was actually my colleague Ben, so thank you, Ben. He created this spreadsheet that you can list all of your goals in that blue cell. And if you want a more quantitative analysis of these goals, you can score each one of your goals against different scoring categories, which those scoring categories would be determined by your group based upon your school improvement, or excuse me, based upon your core values or your school's mission. So maybe it's something that has to do with culture or climate. Maybe it's academic rigor, whatever those categories might be. And then you would score them. And this is set up that it will show those results there that rise, those goals that rise to the top in the purple. And you can combine your scores in your group, and then that will help you prioritize those goals. All of these strategies are in that hyperdoc as well. And then finally, the last step is we want to put your plan in action. So you have your goals identified, but each goal has tasks. So within each of those tasks, you need to determine the timeline. You need to determine who's the person or group of people that's responsible for that task. What are the funding and resources needed? And then finally, what is the success metric? So what's the tool you're going to use to measure if you were successful? And so we put together this planning template for you that helps you really map that out to really put your plan into action. So there you have it. Those are my 3 tips to help you prioritize and set your school improvement goals.
All right, and I'll round it out here with some communication plan tips, and we'll get you out of here on time. So we'll roll through these pretty quick. But I wanted to start with the idea of simplification. There's this is a story from, I think it was either 2008 or 2010, and one of the military officials came in and brought to the general this actual slide, and General Stanley McChrystal said, well, when we understand that slide, we'll have won the war. So you don't want this reaction from your audience of your school improvement plan, right? It's complex, but you've got to find ways to simplify. So I'm going to give you my 3 biggest tips for ways to simplify. And the first is just know what are the 3 things you want your audience to remember. Before you even put the pen to paper, if you can come up with what those 3 things are, that will help guide and focus the rest of that endeavor. And the second is I would challenge you to create a 1-page summary. I used to call these placemats. And when I would go to a board meeting, I'd have a 1-page visual of what I'm trying to say. And there's just something about that that's pretty compelling and that people can remember. And then finally, I would say, let your headings tell your story. We know most of the people that are going to quote unquote read this won't read it at all. They're just going to read those headlines. So make sure whatever those 3 things that you want to convey, that your headlines do that for you without having to read the rest of the text. So I have a couple of examples here. You can flip through those later on your own time. One's more content focused, looking at language arts and math. One's more strategic or process, kind of oriented. So those are some ideas. And I think it's sometimes helpful to look at an idea totally outside of your industry. This is more of a business plan, but I think it shows how headlines can tell the story. You don't have to read anything in here, but you just look at the headlines and know, oh, we're going from a current state to a future state. And there's 3 shifts and they're planned out over quarter 1, 2, 3, and 4. So looking at something that's not necessarily related to education will give you a sense of how someone who's not in education might look at your plan. And there's actually a template that you can use as well in the HyperDoc that you can link to. My second tip is just don't surprise anyone. We talked a lot about this in our group, but about making sure that you seek input from all your stakeholders and then you share it with them, share early drafts with them, let them know how you've implemented it or why you didn't. And as you're doing that, signal to the outside world some of those major tenets, particularly it's pretty charged environment. Parents have a lot of strong opinions. So if you can signal those early so that when you finally do share it outside and publish that final draft, they're not surprised. Right. So, and I think that's kind of an ongoing process. Once you publish it, you still want to continue to seek input. You're always learning and being transparent about that. So hopefully that little process might help you to not surprise anyone. We won't have time to do this in the chat, but do take a second to think if any of those tips are things that, you might find useful. I always think reflection is the best part of any kind of learning. So see if any of those tips under funding or goal setting and prioritization or communication plan would work for you. I'll finally just leave you very quickly with, we are here to help. And we think our version of Better Together is really to have that professional development where we can help teachers build that capacity, but also give them the instructional resources to do that. And with that ongoing support, which I think is most critical. So I'm just going to let you know, you can look at these things in the HyperDoc, but we have a PD plan that we hope helps teachers, not hurts them right now, because it values their time, shows them the respect, and provides support. So we call it the Teachers on the Brink bundle. So if you're looking for some PD for the end of the year that isn't going to drive your teachers crazy, you might check that out. Or if you're looking for project-based learning, making that a reality, we've got lots of units that really save the teachers time in planning those. So that might be something you might want to look at. Or maybe they just need what we call a fairy godmother or fairy godparent. And so we have lots of ongoing support where we're just there, they need something, we provide it for them, right? Here are a few examples. I won't go into them because we're out of time, but want to let you know, those are 3 ways that we like to support schools and teachers right now. Again, I want to get you out of here, so we won't do the poll. But thank you again for your participation here and sharing these ideas. We will send an email out with a link to the handout again if you weren't able to capture that then. And I hope you'll join us for another Better Together or another administrator webinar in the future. And thank you for all you do for your students. I know Dawn shares that sentiment as well.
Absolutely. And if you got a minute to, we've got a giveaway. So if you've got a minute to stay on the line.
Yes. Oh, we'll do that really quick. Sorry. Let's do the giveaway.
All right. We want to give away free stuff.
I don't know. I thought it was at the end there. So at the end of the HyperDoc, there's a link so you can go after this if you want to. We're going to pick the winners tomorrow. So, or you can go right now if you want to use that QR code. So if you are interested in that Lunch and Learn giveaway, as I mentioned at the beginning, we will let the teachers pick a topic of their choice. We'll order in some food for them. And it's a great way for them to feel respected as they get that PD, we hope. So we will give away 5 of those and you can enter to win that there and we'll pick that winner then. Thanks, Dawn.
Hey, no problem. If it's about food, I'll remember.
Exactly. I know I'm so sensitive to make sure we could talk all day about this, Dawn and I, but we won't, I promise. So yes, enter to win that and we hope to see you in the future.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.